And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Karama Neal.
Thank you so much, Val, and thanks so much to all of you for your interest in the Rural Energy for America program and your willingness to be here today to learn a little bit more about this important and exciting opportunity. So we are particularly excited today and about the notice that we're here to discuss today because it includes funding from the new Inflation Reduction Act. In August, Congress passed the Biden-Harris administration's historic legislative package, the Inflation Reduction Act, or IRA, to reduce energy costs for families and create thousands of good-paying jobs for people across rural America. Key sections of the IRA provide funding and unprecedented initiatives to help expand clean energy, transform rural power production, create jobs, and spur economic growth. There has long been strong demand for the Rural Energy for America program, so the investment in this notice, which will be followed by additional notices, creates a real opportunity to meet existing demand and welcome applicants who may not have applied in the past. We note that projects in underserved areas are prioritized for funding under this notice. We're hearing from farmers, producers, and small businesses that reducing costs and expenses is critical, especially now, and REAP provides a way to do that in a climate-smart manner. For example, I was very pleased to visit last summer a hog farmer in Illinois who was paying about $3,500 a month in utility bills to heat and cool his barns where his hogs were kept. He used a REAP grant to install solar panels, and now his bill is $25.47, and that's just to pay for the meter reader to come out and read the meter. So this is we're talking about access to clean, affordable, dependable energy, and we're excited about the opportunity that REAP presents. So with that is hopefully inspiration. I will turn now to my colleague, John McAuliffe, who's the Senior Advisor for Climate at the Rural Business Cooperative Service, to share more. John?
Thank you so much, Dr. Neal, and thank you everybody for being with us today. As Dr. Neal pointed out, this is not just a climate program, this is an economic development program for rural America. I'm our Senior Climate Advisor here at the Rural Business Cooperative Service, and I'll be discussing the program, which may be a recap for some of you who were here on our original webinar a few weeks ago. So we'll move pretty quick through this and then turn it over to my colleague, Jonathan Burns, for an in-depth look at applying to the program. Next slide. So the REAP program as a whole provides loans and grants to rural small businesses and agriculture producers. It may also apply for energy efficiency projects as well as renewable energy systems. We'll talk about exactly what that means later on. The available funding under the current notice will cover up to 40% of total eligible project costs, and that's up from 25% before the IRA. I say up to 40% because not all projects may receive that full 40% depending on whether or not they meet the total cap, which is $1 million for renewable energy systems and $500,000 for energy efficiency. The combined grants and loans have not changed with the IRA, so that will cover up to 75% total project costs. And then loan guarantees or loans can do the same. Next slide, please. In the IRA, the Rural Energy for America program was provided with over $2 billion. This is a program that on an average year was doing between 50 and 60 million. So this is a huge opportunity to invest in rural farmers and small businesses, and we expect it'll invest in over 45,000 of them. 1.7 billion will go to REAP, and 304 million is set aside for technical assistance to apply to the program and underutilized technologies within the program. Next slide. Before we get too much further, I wanted to make sure we understand the cadence of how money will be distributed over the next 5 years. Initially, a large sum will kick us off with 820 million in FY22, which of course has already ended. That then rolls over to FY23, along with another 180 million in FY23. Now, we only announced 250 million of that full amount that we have available to announce, but we'll be announcing other opportunities later in FY2023. The underutilized technology program operates the same way, with a large initial investment and then 32 million a year over the next 5 years. Next slide, please. So here's how this will work. On December 15th, The first federal notice for FY23 was published in the Federal Register, announcing that first $250 million, as well as another $50 million from our mandatory program, which is still capped at 25% federal share. On December 21st, we did our first application webinar. You're here with us on our second application webinar. March 31st will be the deadline for this cycle of the program. So if you haven't started already, you can contact your state energy coordinator. We'll talk more about them later and get your application started. So that next deadline is March 31st. For those who are on this call to learn more about the EA-REAP program, that deadline is January 31st. We're not going to cover it too much in this webinar, but that deadline's coming up as well. A second notice will then be published in spring of 2023. That'll detail the next steps for the REAP program as we move into this 2.0 version. Next slide. With that, I'm going to turn over to Jonathan Burns, who will give a much more in-depth overview of the REAP program and how to apply. Jonathan, without further ado, take it away.
Thank you, John, and thank you to everybody that's tuning in to the webinar today. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. There we go. That's me. Oh, I'm a business loan and grant analyst for Rural Business Cooperative Service. And next slide, please. And I've had the privilege of working in the REAP program for most of the 13 years that I've been with the agency. REAP is a program that's near and dear to my heart. It's a wonderful program that really packs a wonderful 1-2 punch. It's a program that can help with the sustainability of the environment, and it helps with the sustainability of farms and small businesses. So it's really, it really is a great program. Next slide, please. So let's start by looking at who can participate in the program. So the program is open for either agricultural producers or rural small businesses. You need to meet the definition of either of those two to participate in the program. An agricultural producer is an individual or an entity that is directly engaged in the production of agricultural products. It's including cultivating, growing, harvesting of plants and crops, breeding, raising, feeding, or housing of livestock, forestry products, hydroponics, nursery stock, aquaculture. So it's a pretty wide net there. And you just need to make sure that for that entity, 50% or greater of their gross income is derived from the operations. So that's what we consider to be agricultural producers. For rural small businesses, for-profit small businesses, they can be sole proprietorships, they can be LLCs, partnerships, and we do defer to the Small Business Administration's definition of a small business. We don't try to rewrite the book on that one. Everybody that files their taxes, that files their taxes has to record what's called their NAICS code, the North American Industrial Classification System, where they classify the limitations of an entity before they're no longer considered a small business, and it will go by either number of employees or gross receipts annually. As long as you're under those thresholds, you're considered a rural small business. Rural small businesses do need to be located in a rural area. You'll see on the website, there is a link to the website right here, to the official program website. You may see mention on the website or talk of 50,000 or less people. That's kind of an oversimplification of the definition of rural. It does get down, I believe it's drilled down as far as the census tract. So we really strongly encourage you to go to the website, and it does have an interactive map feature to it. So you'll be able to type in your address, and it'll be able to tell you whether or not your address is eligible. Next slide, please. So an agricultural producer does not have to be in a rural area. So as long as the production is on site and the project there is on co-located, you can be in Dallas, you can be in Boston, as long as it's co-located there, that rurality requirement does not apply to that entity. Agricultural producers, the only way that a nonprofit can be eligible is as an agricultural producer, and they still are going to need to meet that 50% rule when it comes to their income. So you need to take a look at donations and fundraising and whatnot to make sure that 50% or more of your income is still derived from that agricultural operations. So again, small businesses, they must be located in the rural area. Private for-profit entities, that does include cooperative, an electric utility, can also be a tribal corporation or other tribal business entities chartered under Section 17 or similar structures. And as I mentioned a moment ago, we do defer to the SBA when it comes to defining as to whether or not the entity is a small business. And unfortunately, aside what we just talked about, nonprofits are not eligible any other way other than as an agricultural producer. So that's who the program is for. Next slide, please. So let's talk about a little bit about what the program does. There are two main features to the Rural Energy for America program. The two eligible purposes are either the purchase and installation of a renewable energy system or the purchase and installation of energy efficiency improvements. The agency is casting a rather large net here when it comes to energy efficiency improvement projects. It could be lighting, heating, cooling, ventilation, automated controls, insulation, just to name a few, heat curtains, as long as it's saving energy and the energy savings figures can be backed up with an energy assessment or an energy audit, depending on the size of the project, then chances are it's eligible. For renewable energy, we have the 800-pound gorilla in the room, obviously solar, but definitely let's not forget about the others, wind, hydro, anaerobic digesters, biomass, geothermal, and wave or ocean power. The main thing here, the main takeaway from this slide is that the technologies that are in your project, they must be commercially available. The program, unfortunately, does not allow for any research and development. Next slide, please. So let's do a little bit more of a deeper dive into the eligible uses of the funds. So what can the funds actually be used to pay for? So obviously for the equipment, you have the purchase and installation. It can be new or refurbished, provided that it has that warranty. Post-application construction and facility improvements. I say post-application because I will be saying that or touching upon that topic throughout our discussion here. That is vitally important because only costs that are incurred after the agency receives a completed application may be considered eligible for reimbursement. So that's very important. I'd like everybody to understand that. Eligible project costs would be retrofitting of a existing renewable energy system. So if you wanted to retrofit a solar project with battery storage, that would be eligible. Professional service fees, so obviously if there are any fees that are involved, would be eligible. Working capital land acquisitions are only eligible for guaranteed loans, and there are some restrictions that are involved with that. Ineligible project costs. The number one ineligible project costs I would like everybody to take away here today would be residential energy projects. Unfortunately, there can be no residential aspect to the program. So if there is a meter that also services a residence, you're going to want to contact your state energy coordinator as soon in the process as possible. I can't stress that enough. In every state, the agency has state energy coordinators. Please contact them as soon as possible in your project, in your planning, to ensure that any speed bumps that you may be hitting or that you could potentially hit along the way are addressed as early on in the process as possible. So if there's a resident on there, it's not necessarily a hard no, but we'll have to take another look at it. Perhaps we can either prorate the system, or perhaps in some situations you can add a second meter. Other ineligible project costs would be like lines of credit or lease payments, or pre-application construction and facility improvements. So when it comes time to request reimbursement for the project, if it's determined at that time that some of those costs were paid before the application was considered complete, unfortunately, we would have to discount them from our reimbursement calculations. And I say before the agency has determined the application complete, because please also understand that the date that the agency actually receives your application may not necessarily be when it is considered complete, because there may be some material information that is missing that's required by regulation for your application to be considered complete. Next slide, please. So let's talk about some of the funding requirements. So as John mentioned, now we are able to fund up to 40% of eligible project costs for either renewable energy systems or energy efficiency improvements. If your project is a renewable energy system, the minimum grant request is $2,500. And if that $2,500 is 40% of your projects, that means the minimum total project costs are $6,250. The maximum amount of the request, as John mentioned earlier, is now $1 million. And if that represents 40% of your project cost, then the total eligible project costs would be $2.5 million if you wanted to receive the $1 million grant limit. For energy improvements, it is different. It's pretty much exactly, or almost a half exactly. For minimum energy efficiency projects, it's $1,500, and the maximum grant request for energy efficiency is $500,000. It is worth mentioning here that the combined total assistance provided to any one entity, that is $1.5 million for one fiscal year. It's also worth mentioning that in any one fiscal year, an entity may receive one energy efficiency improvement award and one renewable energy system award for one fiscal year. That's only one fiscal year, because I want to stress that, because we do have frequent flyers to the program. We're able to assist ag producers and rural small businesses not just once. So if you have projects, if you have a long-term goal of reducing your energy costs and stages, and definitely keep us in mind, and please keep the line of communication open with your state energy coordinators. Next slide, please. Guaranteed loan assistance. Like you've heard mentioned, there is a guaranteed loan aspect to the program. It is up to 75% of the total eligible project cost. That has not changed. And for those of you who aren't overly familiar with what exactly the guaranteed loan is, it's a credit enhancement tool for the lender. So if you were to get a guaranteed loan, a REAP guaranteed loan, you wouldn't be making payments to USDA Rural Development. You would be making them to your bank that you would go to get a loan. They would bring that loan to us, and we would make sure it meets all the requirements, and then we would issue a guarantee to the lender should you default on the loan. So it's a way to spur on economic activity in a way there. So we guarantee that commercial loan. So that means that the terms and rates are negotiated between you and the lender. and that, you know, fees and appraisal and collateral requirements also apply to that. Next slide, please. So for fiscal year 23, which we currently find ourselves in, there's 2 application deadlines according to the notice of solicitation of applications that was published. One had already passed October 31st. That was for grant requests of $20,000 or less. And the next application deadline that we have is March 31st. And though that competition, there's actually 2 competitions, that deadline. One of them is for grant requests of $20,000 or less. And then also a separate competition for grant requests that are over $20,000. So I would like to stress the takeaway from this slide would be, you know, obviously the deadlines, but I want to encourage you to please do not wait until March 29th or March 30th to submit your applications. We encourage you to get them in before then. You can contact your state energy coordinators will be able to assist you with that. But we just, it doesn't make it easy to on anybody if you know, we receive 90% of our applications the day before. That just makes it a little tougher for everybody. We do run a continuous cycle for the guaranteed loans on a monthly basis. Next slide, please. So just to highlight a couple of things that we've kind of already mentioned here. So again, there can't be any residential benefit that's allowed. If you are a small agricultural producer and there is a residence on your property and you want to connect a renewable energy system, you know, a solar system to a meter that also serves as your residence, there's going to be some additional restrictions. We're going to need an energy assessment. You're going to need to be able to document your historic energy usage. We're going to need to know how much energy the residence has used and compared to how much energy you're looking to produce on the solar system. And in some cases, you may also be able to install a second meter to service just the renewable energy system. That may also be an option. So again, please keep the line of communication open with the agency as soon as possible in the process, and we'll be able to walk you through that. Unless you're an ag producer, like I said before, that you must be in a rural area. And the REAP prohibits receiving more than 40% grant from a federal source. So that 40% is from total grant funds, not just the REAP program. We have run into the other programs from other agencies that may also be for installing renewable energy systems. If it's a federal source, just know that that 40% is the limitation of all federal funds, and we will have to take a look at that. Applicants are provided 2 years to complete their projects. There are extensions that are available. You would need to request them before those 2 years are up, but we could extend that out for you if needed. A very important highlight for the program is that all applicants need to be registered with SAM.gov, the System for Award Management. The agency is not directly involved with SAM.gov. I do know that they can be backed up. So if you are planning to apply for a REAP grant, we strongly encourage you to start that registration process with SAM.gov as early as possible. That can take a while to go through. They do quite an extensive check of everything down to the spelling of your address and whatnot. They do have a help desk that I've heard is actually pretty helpful. So please don't wait if you're planning on applying for a REAP grant. Please start that process as soon as possible. Another point worth mentioning is if your total project costs are over $200,000, it does require some additional documents, some financial documents, historic financial statements, projected financial statements. So just know that the more complicated or larger your project, the more documentation that you're going to need to supply. And again, I can't stress it enough, only costs that are incurred after a completed application is received may be considered eligible for reimbursement. And please, we can't assume that just because an application is received that it is complete. It does need to be reviewed by the agency to ensure that it has all of the information required in order to consider it complete. Next slide, please. So how to apply? I think I've said it a dozen times already. I'll say it a dozen more. Please, you can start by contacting your state energy coordinators. They'll be able to answer any specific questions that you have on your project. Applications, the official program website. If you go to the official program website, not only will it have the mapping software that I mentioned a few minutes ago to check your address, but it'll have a To Apply tab. If you click on that To Apply tab, it has on there links to all of the required documents that you're going to need to submit. Well, maybe not all of the required documents. There are going to be some non-agency documents needed to submit, like your quotes and contracts or whatnot. But if you go to that To Apply tab, you'll have access to all 3 sizes that we have for our application packages, along with all of the other official forms that are required. Applications, they can be posted through courier or U.S. Postal Service to any rural development office. They can be emailed to the energy coordinators, and you can also apply for the REAP grant through grants.gov. Next slide, please. So you may be joining us in the webinar today and had already submitted an application for fiscal year 23, which is excellent. Rest assured, the agency is not going to leave you behind now that the program is up to 40%. If you've submitted at 25% and now it's up to 40, we do have a pathway for those applicants to not get left behind. So if you want to increase your grant request and keep the original application received date, you will need to submit a new standard form 424. Please don't just submit the 424 with only the updated federal grant request amount. On the 3rd page, please submit a completed, signed and dated SF-424. And we do need to receive that no later than February 1st, 2023. The agency has begun the process of notifying all applicants of current packages and making sure that they are aware. But the biggest takeaway from this slide is that there can't be any scope of work changes to your project, nor changes in total project costs. So unfortunately, you won't be able to say, oh, I want to put in a bigger system, or I want to do more energy efficiency improvements. Unfortunately, you would still be, the only way to be eligible for the 40% is to not change anything about that project. Next slide, please. If you want to increase your grant request, and if you want to build a larger system, and you want to, take advantage of the program more so, you can. And if you haven't started spending money on your project, I will say that you're able to. You just need to withdraw your existing application prior to February 1st. You can send an email to your energy state coordinator, just letting them know that you would like to withdraw your application. And then just submit a new REAP application with the updated scope of work and total project costs. So the application receive date will be when the agency receives that new completed application package. So please make sure that you're paying close attention. And if you have started your project, or started spending money on your project, this may not be the best option for you. Because again, costs incurred after received a completed application will be ineligible. So please contact your state energy coordinator if you have any questions on how that should go. Next slide, please. So if you want to keep everything the same, if we haven't heard from the REAP applicant by February 1st, then we're going to make the assumption that that's the option the applicant would like to take. Here is a link to the official program website. We can drop that into the chat, as well as a link to the state energy coordinators can be provided very easily as well. If you needed the standard form or SF 424, like I mentioned, it is available under the To Apply tab. It's also available on grants.gov. If you go to grants.gov, it has all of the standard forms that are used throughout the federal government. Next slide, please. And that concludes my section of today's presentation. I'm going to turn it back over to John and to go over questions and answers. Thank you, John.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Ton of information there. And I really appreciate everyone's patience. And I think our numbers have steadily increased while you were talking, Jonathan. So you must have been doing a good job. I want to say a couple things before we dig into the Q&A section here. The first one is, if you've answered or if you've asked a question in the chat and your specific question hasn't been answered and it's been 10 or 15 minutes, go ahead and check the answered section. It may have already been answered, or a similar one may have already been answered in there, in which case we won't answer the exact same question twice, just to save Deb's time, who's working hard answering all your questions in the chat. The second thing I'll say, a couple folks have asked about why 40% is the current maximum. It has two reasons. The first one is by the time the IRA passed, we already had a very upcoming deadline. And so we needed to determine what made sense for all projects in the program. And so we determined that all projects in the program should get 40%. Some projects will be eligible for 50% down the road. And we will announce what projects are going to be able to do that before the end of this application period. So that being said, you should complete your application, get everything done you need to get done. And if it turns out that you happen to have one of those eligible projects, you'll easily be able to pull it and resubmit it at a later date, assuming, as Jonathan mentioned, you have not started work on it. So that'll be the key there. So that might be good for you. It may not. You can determine whether or not that's the route you want to go. So with that, we are going to kick this over to our live questions. So folks can raise their hands and our colleagues will track you down and we'll figure out who the best person to answer your question is. So thank you so much for those who are sticking around, please do. And for those who have gotten what they need, thank you so much for coming. So with that, let's go to questions.
All right, first one is Charles Martin. Charles, would you please come off mute? You should be able to go to the bottom left of your screen and click unmute.
Got it. Thank you very much. Well, first of all, I'd like to start off by saying thank you, thank you, thank you. This is so nice of you to take the time to help explain this. And I just have a couple quick questions. So if you can buy, if I have an opportunity to buy equipment that's 10 years old, but it was never used, can that qualify?
So the question is, can used equipment qualify that has already been purchased, or you are considering purchasing it?
Yeah. So in other words, here's the situation. I have an opportunity to get a great deal on some machinery that was bought 10 years ago, but it was never used. So my question is, like, the fact that it was never used, to a certain degree, it's still like new. Does that qualify?
I think it'll depend on the total, the project as a whole, but I do not think, and Jonathan, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I do not think there is any pre-disqualification for equipment being previously used or older.
Really? Okay, because I was under the impression it had to be new.
Yes. Yep. Yes. Excuse me. Sorry. Yes. It does need to be used equipment, or it could be refurbished, provided that it comes with a warranty. So perhaps if the equipment hasn't been used and you still have an eligible warranty for that for the machinery, then perhaps that would be eligible. Yeah, it can't be used. It can be refurbished with the warranty.
Yeah, see, the catch is this machinery was bought at an auction by a guy, and it was brand new. It was never used, but it's 10 years old. So technically it's, you know,
Yeah.
and the opportunity is you can buy it for 10 cents on the dollar.
Right.
Yeah, unfortunately, it sounds like it would be outside of warranty, and I don't think that would be eligible.
So it wouldn't be eligible. Okay.
Correct.
All right. All right. If a company then was willing to refurbish it and offer a warranty, would then it qualify?
Yes, refurbished equipments that comes with the warranty, then yes.
Okay. All right. That's great. Okay. And then if you don't mind me asking another question is, so it seems like one of the hurdles though is, let's assume I get this application in say March 15th. How long does it take to get it approved? And then once it's approved, the part of the problem is once it's approved, then to order new equipment. And some of these people, they're like 6 months out, you know, booked, but is that basically the reality?
Yeah, that's a great question. When it comes to timing, you're really going to have to keep in touch with your state energy coordinator. How long it takes to announce awards on the state level for their state competitions is going to depend on, it's really going to be a function of how many applications they've received and how much staff they have to get through it. Not every, you know, this is going to be one of the differences from state to state is how quickly they're able to turn through applications and whatnot. So I would say, you know, please reach out to your local state energy coordinator. They'll be able to best give you a time frame on that.
Okay, because what I understand is that if you apply, let's say March 15th, the deadline's March 31st, but the problem is they might not approve it for a month or 2 months.
Mhm.
And then you can't get, then the next question, sorry for all the questions, is how long would it take to get the money to pay for it?
Well, there's a lot to unpack in that question, Charles. So generally speaking, unless an applicant is going to be providing surety, the REAP grant is reimbursement based. So it's not there's not a grant where you'll be able to take the money and then pay for the project. So, and it generally, you know, generally speaking, after the March 31st deadline, it does take 2 months or so before we're able to make those selections. And then an applicant has 2 years to complete the project and then request reimbursement. So you wouldn't be able to use the REAP money to pay for that. It would need to be reimbursed. You'd need to show that you paid for everything and then we reimburse you.
Oh, that's great. I thought it was the other way around. You couldn't buy it until you got approved, and then you had to wait for the money to buy it, to pay for it.
Yes, yeah. As long as we receive a completed application, costs after that date will be considered eligible. But you would be running the risk. I mean, until you've been notified that your application was selected for award, you would be running the risk that your application was not selected. So
Okay,
kind of
okay.
catch-22.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And it's worth mentioning the scoring has not changed, so you'll be able to review kind of what the process looks like ahead of time. So thank you for those really easy questions to start us off, Charles. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Let's go to Michael Schukenhauer.
Hi, good morning. I don't see a camera. Okay. I had two nitty-gritty detailed questions around some of the wording that you put forward there, and I put them in the chat actually. So one of them was eligible entity needs to be, you need to be in an eligible area. Sometimes we're forming LLCs in a town that may not be an eligible area, but the actual project may be in an eligible area. Say the LLC is in San Francisco, the project is in Arkansas. How does that affect that whole thing?
Yep, Mike, that's a great question. It's the project site.
Okay. And then the second question that I have, it said someplace that the applicant cannot get paid out of the grant. if I understood that correctly, and I may be misparaphrasing that whole thing. But you have people that are working, at the applicant, and they're the ones that are shepherding the entire process. So does that mean these people are not getting a salary? What's the idea about that one? Or how do these people get a salary when they actually work there? I mean, you start up with a one-person LLC of sorts.
Well, you can't charge, you can't use the grant to pay for your own work and whatnot as it relates to the project. So if an entity is purchasing a renewable energy system and wants to do some of the work, they're not going to be able to request reimbursement to pay themselves for the grant.
Yeah, and Michael, this is Deb Yoakum with the agency. I was actually typing the answer to your question right now, so I'm going to hop in. We cannot pay the owner for any labor, but if you have a business entity and you have employees that are performing the work, as long as they're qualified employees, we would be able to pay wages, but we would not be able to pay any profit on top of that. So it just have to be a fair market wage.
Yes.
Yeah, but that right there is a very important distinction, because if you're the owner of the entity, you may be taking a salary.
Yes, and that would not be eligible.
Sorry?
That would not be eligible. We can't pay the applicant owner for performing work on the grant. That's a conflict of interest.
So you're saying that the owner's salary is not is not payable. Obviously, the profits are not payable. That's clear. But if the owner hires employees to do the work, then that employee's salary is reimbursable.
Right. If you're an entity that has employees and you're paying them fair market wages for qualified labor, that is eligible.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you for those equally easy questions, Michael. Thanks. Got some good ones today.
All right, let's go to Robert Eckard.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak for a minute. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Perfect. I had a quick question about the scoring in the past. And I've applied almost exclusively in California in the past. Sometimes the scoring has been has included either a scoring bonus or a mechanism that helps to provide a scoring benefit to people who request $250,000 or less. My understanding is that that's been applied during some years, but not other years. Is something like that being applied this year? Are there any kind of funding thresholds whereby if we exceed that funding request, we either get fewer bonus points or fewer points, or we get bonus points if we are under a particular number?
So the scoring hasn't changed at all during this notice. So I can't speak to whether it was or was not applied in past years, but it hasn't changed at this point at all. Jonathan, feel free to add to that if you'd like.
No, there's nothing to add there. We haven't made any changes to the scoring criteria right now. So, whatever it's been in the last few fiscal years is going to be how it is for this one.
Is that so? Just to follow up on that a bit, is that are the criteria applied the same for every state, or does it vary state by state?
I believe there are 8 categories to scoring, and there's only one section. The state director administrator points section, I think, could vary from state to state. Individual state directors have the ability to some leeway there, but the other categories are across the board. La-di-da-di, everybody.
And if I want to understand what my state's scoring criteria are and the weighting of those criteria, can I request that from the state energy coordinator?
Yeah, I would say give them a call. Yeah.
Okay, great. And if I'm having
may
a
not,
hard
excuse
time,
me, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. They may not have, there may not be a set state individual policy. not every state decides to have their own state admin points. They may have already, so check with
Okay.
them.
Check with them. Okay, and last question, if I'm having difficulty getting a hold of my state energy coordinator, which I've run into in the past, is there somebody else that I should reach out to, like a different state or someone else?
Yeah, you can reach out to me. I can help connect you if you're having
Thank you.
trouble connecting.
Okay, thank you.
There
You're
are
welcome.
also state directors, and we are also working on hiring with the administrative funds that was included in the Inflation Reduction Act, more positions to be able to fulfill all of the projects that you've got here on the phone today. So
Great, thank you for your help.
thank you, Robert.
All right, Lyle Rawlings.
Thank you, Val, and thanks for this exciting presentation. Awesome. My question is, are ag producers that are schools or public entities or nonprofits eligible?
Jonathan?
Yes, public entities are not eligible. The only way that a nonprofit can be eligible is if they are 50% or more of their gross income comes from the production and sale of agricultural products. So that entity would need to take a look at their revenue streams to see how much they're getting in from all sources. So it would depend. You still need to meet that 50% definition, but that's the only way that a nonprofit can qualify.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Lyle.
All right, Chanel Curtin.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
You
we can.
Okay, hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for having this fabulous information. I have, we're a new startup company and we're looking to do solar farm. What is the qualifications in order to apply for the grant and loan to purchase the land and to build the whole solar farm? Do we have to be in business for X number of years, or how does that work?
That's a fantastic question when we get a lot, Jonathan.
Yes, there, according to the definition, there's no time that the length required that a business needs or an agricultural producer needs to be in business. So they would be eligible. You would need to check in terms of process for your guaranteed loan. I mean, the first step would be for you to contact a lender in your area and start the talks with them about potentially getting a loan for your project. That would be the first step for your guaranteed route.
Okay, okay. And we're not farmers.
Okay. Rural small business. Yep.
Yes, correct. Rural small business.
Yeah. So the very first step you need to do is go to the website and make sure that your address and the project site are located in a rural area. That's your first step.
Yes, and I did that, and we are.
Okay, great.
Yes. And second question, okay, so regarding the grant part of it, is there any time frame qualifications that we have to be in business for the grant?
No, you just need to be able to know. There's no time. You don't need to be in business for any specific length of time.
Okay. Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, you still should be able to. So here's the application. The application requirements or the regulations were updated last year. So now applicants are able to self-certify to meeting the requirements. But the agency does reserve the right to request the documentation. And that might be one of the times I would think one of the exceptions where the agency may ask for documentation. If you are a new business and you don't at least have 1 year of financials, or if you don't have perhaps some interim financial documents or reports that you could provide. You would want to have something at the ready to be able to say, you know, if you're asked, oh, here's why we're thinking that we're eligible for it. So you would just need to be able to show something if asked.
Okay, okay. And the last question is, will we be able to get a copy of this, or like the information? Because I was trying to take pictures of the links and everything like that. Will we be able to get the email or the audio recap of this segment of the information that was given?
We will be sending this out a few days after the webinar.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Excited to see your application.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Jeff Hudson.
I'm sorry, that wasn't here. I did not realize I'd raised my hand.
All right, my favorite question so far. Thank you, Jeff.
No worries, thank you. Let's go to Angel Zayas.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Great, thank you for the webinar. This is really great. My question goes to, you mentioned that it's only 40% grant from federal sources per fiscal year. So I just wanted to be clear. If I submit now in March, what fiscal year we are? Is 2023, correct? That's where we are?
Yep, the fiscal year ends at the end of September.
Okay. And then the following question is, if I apply to another grant, let's say the next fiscal year, that's separate then, and that would not count for that 40%, kind of like a second phase of that project. Would that be possible?
It can't be the same project. It can be a different project, and you can apply and still get 40%, but it can't be two applications for the same project.
Oh, so it doesn't, it's not really per fiscal year, it's really per project then.
Yes.
Essentially.
Because what I'm thinking is kind of like a separate projects and different alternatives in the future with some micro grids. And that's kind of like a second phase out in the 1 year, 2 year after this one could be completed. So let me ask another follow-up question. Can I apply for that if this project was already finalized 1 or 2 years down the road? Or it's only top 40% of federal sources for that project?
If I understand your question correctly, yeah, it is 40% for the project.
Okay, so it's per project 40% and that's it on the federal sources. Okay.
Yep.
That's clear. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Angel.
All right, Mike Studholm.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
This is actually Shane. I work with Mike, and we are working together on a project. We work for Mountain View Solar out of Berkeley Springs, but it is somewhat unique, and we are familiar with the REAP program and have used it in the past. But this particular gentleman has a business, and his building is partially part of his business, and then he also has passive income from the other part of the building that he rents to a different business, or he leases to a different business. But he wants to offset all of the electric usage with solar. Can you talk to me a little bit about passive income and how that pertains to the REAP, and if that is possible? Or we get really a grid.
I understand your question. Are you talking about net metering as passive income? As in terms of
So, let me tell you exactly what it is. He has a business in an area in Virginia, and it is just basically an RC racing business, just like a hobby business. But the other part of it, he leases as a trucking company, all the same building. So the trucking company income is passive income. But would that impact the REAP in any way if we were trying to offset the usage for the trucking company and his small business. I've just not run into this where it's a passive income situation.
I don't believe so, but I defer to Jonathan's expertise on that.
Yeah, I'm trying to, I apologize. I'm having trouble following you with the passive income and how it possibly could be an issue. I'm trying to think. I would say, I could tell you, maybe this is a way to answer. Maybe this is the best way to answer it. So there's no limitation on how much energy you can produce. So if you wanted to put in a system to produce more than what you've used previously, there's no regulatory restriction on that. So does that answer your question? Because I think that fits into that category.
Yeah, I might be able to put this in a different way.
It sounds like, without going into, and I didn't mean to cut you off there, but it sounds like you may need to reach out to the state energy coordinator in your area to go over, if you really wanted to dig deep into your specific project, you may need to talk to them, but please continue your question.
Oh, no, that basically sums it. And what about car chargers? Are they covered by the REAP?
You want to take that?
Yeah. Yes.
Revenue generating car chargers, not just complimentary car chargers. Let's say he put car chargers on the outside of this business.
No.
What he gets mostly
I think we answered that in the question and answer already, but electric vehicle charging and other structures are eligible, but not if it's being sold. You can't disperse the energy for retail. You can't sell that.
Okay.
So no.
Cool. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
All right. Tina McMahon.
You're on the air.
Hi, thank you for fielding my question. You've mentioned the term competition a couple of times. I reside in Ohio on a dairy farm. And we've been through EKIP a couple years. Ranking is never high enough to achieve anything. So I guess I'm just questioning, what are the real chances of getting anything like this? And exactly what do you mean when you use the term competition?
I'm sorry, John, you want me to take that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I say competition because there is, like we've talked about, there's a scoring matrix that we use. So once we've reviewed applications for eligibility and completeness, we score them according to the regulations. Everybody gets a score. All eligible complete applications get a score. And every state receives a set allocation from national office. And what the states do is, once they've reviewed all of the applications and they've scored all the applications, they go to the top scoring application and they award them their grant request. Then they go to the next scoring application and they give them their grant request. And they go down the list, so on and so forth, until they're out of money. So it doesn't, unfortunately, we use the word competition because unfortunately, that's what it is. Not everybody that applies that has an eligible project, will be selected for funding, simply because, at least in years past, of the funding limitations that we've had in place, which would hopefully, so this should be alleviated. This burden should be alleviated a little bit with the extra money that the program has been receiving. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So in comparing it to EKIP, there's more money available to possibly cover more grants / loans.
Let me put it this way. So the program was oversubscribed by 15 to 25% last year, meaning that there were some applications that weren't able to get there, but we've increased each state's allocation by almost 5 times. So assuming approximately the same amount of oversubscription, I suspect there'll be more. I would encourage you to apply.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, please.
We can't say for sure. That's why I'm speaking the way I am, but.
Gotcha.
You. Verna Petersheim.
Well, I didn't hear that. So
Yeah, can you hear me now?
yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
we can hear you, Verna.
Very good. Well, I have several questions, but it's more to do with the 40% that's available. One is there an application that needs to be filled out or more in the tech report? That type of thing, if you do ask for the 40% on the applications.
So let me ask a quick clarifying question. Have you already completed a REAP application and submitted it
Yes, I've done so numerous times.
for this cycle, rather?
No, we are doing 2 of them this year.
Okay, so if you have not yet completed your application, Jonathan, you want to swing? Oh, actually, you can swing back up to that slide because I think it is worth reiterating, but let me go find which slide it is.
Yeah, and I apologize, I wasn't here for the first 6-10 minutes of the
That's okay. It's
slideshow.
very, very important. Sherry, can you bring us up to slide 25? Go over this one more time for everybody.
There we go.
I'm just going to go over Jonathan, why don't you just go over 25 through 27, so the whole application process.
Yeah, sure.
For folks who weren't with us the first time.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
So thank you, Verna, for asking the question. This is a super important point that we want to stress. So if you've already submitted an application before the NOSA was published, while the program was still limited to 25%, if as long as you're not going to change the scope of your project, as long as you're not going to increase your total project costs, if you just simply would like to get the 40%, the only thing you need to do is submit a new SF-424. That's one of the, if you've submitted a couple of applications before, you should be familiar with that. Standard Form 424, it's 3 pages long.
Yep.
We would just ask that you update, I think it's box 18, the estimated funding, the federal funding line there. You just update that. And then obviously, well, actually all of those little box 18 lines, just update those and complete and sign it, and then send it to us before February 1st. That's the only thing that you would need to do in order to get considered for the 40%.
Okay, but if I haven't submitted an application yet before March 31st, am I, is there additional, I guess is what I'm asking? Because I haven't heard too much, or there's not much information out there about the 40% versus the 25%, of the project cost.
Yeah, no, it uses we've decided for fiscal year 23 to use all of the same forms, all of the same everything. So you would literally just go to the to apply tab, take those documents and fill them out using the 40% figure as opposed to the 25% number.
Okay. Now, if our clients are not awarded the 40% and they would like to reapply again for the application next year, is there a way we can lower that cost in expectation of maybe getting them at least 25% of the cost versus 40%? Is that possible, or do we need to keep the application the same and keep that at 40%?
Yeah, if your client submits an application for assistance for fiscal year 23 and it is not selected for award, it will be withdrawn automatically at the end of the fiscal year. Your client would be able to resubmit an application. There's no limits to the number of applications you could submit. I would just strongly encourage you to pay attention to starting your project, both in construction and spending of monies on those projects. So as long as some funds aren't spent on the project before we receive a completed application. So that's kind of a caveat to that. So if they submit one this year, let's say they submit an application in hopes and they start their project and they start spending, start spending money and they're just hoping that they get selected, then they may have been backed into a corner there, because then if they turn around and resubmit a new application next fiscal year, well, they've already spent money, so that they're going to be up against a wall there. And
Right.
So
Yeah.
if that's the case, then that's going to be unfortunate.
Yeah, we understand that part of it.
Okay.
The next part has to do with the 4280C form, the one larger than 200,000. On there, it does state a feasibility study may be requested. It's not like it states that it needs to be submitted. How do I know if I need to actually submit one or not?
That is an excellent question. The program before the updates that I mentioned that we did, I think it was in August of last year. It used to be across the board, if your total project costs were over 200,000, you were required to submit a feasibility study. So now what we've decided is that, you know, there's technologies out there for, like, for example, solar, that they're mature. They're not going to really need a feasibility study. So we do reserve the right to require one. But if you're putting in you're going to have to take a look at the project, whether or not how complex it is. So if you're doing a hydro project, you're still going to need one. If you're doing an anaerobic digester project, you're going to need a feasibility study. But if it's for, the basic technologies, solar, you're not going to need one unless completing that project is going to make a significant change in the entity, unless it's going from, let's say I own a rural small business selling, wooden trinkets that I make on the side, and I want to put in a 6 megawatt solar system. That's going to change the nature of the business. Now I'm going to be a solar farm as opposed to then there's a possibility for that. I would say the best thing for you to do would be to contact the state energy coordinator and talk to them about it.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much for answering my questions. I appreciate it.
Very welcome.
Great, thank you, Verna. Quentin Ramos. Quentin Ramos, if you would go to the bottom left and unmute. There you go.
Question I have, Jan, sorry. The question I have is regards underutilized renewable energy technologies that were presented in one of the slides, and but I was not clear on that one because I saw something about the schools and that thing.
Sure, I can answer that question, Quentin, and feel free to have a follow-up. So there's no current definition for underutilized technologies. That is something that was in the IRA when it was passed, and we determined not to include anything related to that in this initial round. Again, that is because we had to get it out relatively quickly, as the beginning of the year was about a month after the IRA was passed, the end of the fiscal year. So in the next round of announcements regarding this program, we'll have a definition for underutilized technologies and what that means for folks' applications. But right now, if you submit between now and March 31st, it won't mean anything for your application. So. All right, who's next?
Okay. Aaron Anaker.
Hey there, thanks everybody for putting this on. I really appreciate it. We actually got some REAP funding years ago, so I'm a bit familiar with the project. We're a solar powered granola factory in rural Maine. And we have 2 upcoming capital improvements. I'm looking at them as one project, but I think they could be sliced up. And I guess that's my question, which is, we're going to be adding a 10,000 square foot warehouse on top of at our site to retain the jobs in rural Maine, as opposed to moving them elsewhere. So we think it's a good project. There's a program through our state, so it's from ARPA funds that we think we're eligible for, and we've met with administrators and our banking partners. But I'm wondering if that part of the project, about $1 million project, we'll have the opportunity to make it more energy efficient and do, I'm not sure solar will work on the roof because we're gonna have to shed the snow the opposite way of the sun. And then the second part of the project is updating our existing facility to have better working, more efficient HVAC, and also better insulation. And we have to bring up some of our lighting because we're adding more production lines, not to get too deep into it. But those are sort of the two separate projects within one facility upgrade. And I'm wondering if I bundle them together, or, you know, would the warehouse be eligible for this type of a program? Or is it more the obvious energy upgrades on our existing facility, if that makes sense?
Jonathan?
Sure. Thanks for your question, Aaron. So I'm going to need to ask you a couple of questions here.
Please.
So for the first part of your question, am I hearing that you would like to know if you can apply for an energy efficiency improvement project for new construction?
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's not going to be eligible.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah,
Okay.
we really need to be able to document energy savings.
Yep.
So without being able to document historic usage, that's tough. And
Right.
What was the second part of your question again?
So that's what I thought you would say. So the second part of the project is taking our existing facility and putting a new HVAC system in, because ours is just not working.
Sure.
But from an efficiency standpoint, it's just not working. And then we would likely do some new upgrades in the lighting. We're talking about putting some other energy efficient parts of that project. That seems to me like a better program for this, correct?
Absolutely. That's right up our alley. Please. Yeah. Please call the state energy coordinator in Maine. Please call them as soon as possible in your planning for this project. And yeah, that's right up our alley. Absolutely.
Okay, great. Now, in the meantime, I just have my admin director send me, she's on this call too. We're moving our warehouse to another facility that we're renting for the next year while we build this new construction and upgrade. We want to put some like fiber optics in at this place because there's not, again, it's rural and there's just not that type of facility. Would that be eligible for this program too?
Yeah, unfortunately not. It's really limited to renewable, systems that are going to produce energy, or, upgrading, making upgrades in order to save energy.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. No, you answered my question. It really helped. I'm glad I was on this call because I was looking at coupling the two projects within our facility, but I think I'll now divide them up and look at the energy upgrades as a separate program. That's really helpful. Thank you so much, everybody.
No, you're very welcome, Aaron. Great question. First step is to check your address to make sure you're in a rural area, and then contact your state coordinator.
We definitely are. And you guys have been helpful in the past, like I said. So thanks so much.
All right. Thank you.
Great. And I do have a request for everybody who's still on the call as we get to the last 15 minutes here. For questions that are related to specific eligibility of a given project, we ask that you hold those and reach out to your state energy coordinator so we can get to as many general questions as possible now that we're kind of in the last phase of our discussion here. I did have one I wanted to pull out of the chat quickly, Jonathan. If a feasibility study is required, could folks use REAP funds to help pay for that feasibility study?
Yeah, well,
project cost.
I'm sorry?
As part of their total project cost.
Yeah, unfortunately not. That the feasibility study is going to need to be submitted with your application.
All right, next on the phones.
Okay, the next hand raised is Tom LaFond. Tom? We're not hearing you, Tom. I can see you're off mute. Do you want to go to that little caret and just make sure you've got the correct microphone? Maybe come. Tom, if you're speaking, we're not able to hear you. Looks like we're having a little technical difficulty there. We can maybe come back if that works. We can go to Kelly Lund.
Looks like Kelly's still muted.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Talking to myself over here.
There we go.
Thanks again, everyone, for your time. It seems like a lot of my questions have been answered. The last one I just asked is there higher scoring for having cash for the client funded portion of the project versus a loan guaranteed or set up for the 60%?
Yeah, that's a great question. In terms of that section of the scoring, if your client has loan documentation to show that, the funds are committed and, maybe just subject to standard commercial underwriting conditions, then it doesn't matter if it's that or if it's cash. It doesn't matter.
Okay. And then I had also asked, I just wanted to make sure I understood this correctly for the reporting requirements. I had read some or heard of some requirements that were more extensive for equipment. So for a solar project, for example, is there any reporting requirements past the initial 3 years for the panels and equipment themselves, or is it just those initial 3 years of reporting? Like I guess I'm not asking, is there lifetime equipment reporting requirements?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we did make some changes to that part of the regulations. So in the past that may be true, but now we loosened the requirements for that. So the answer is there could be reporting requirements, but I don't know that I've seen a solar project that would have any new ones anyways, because of the way that we've redid the regulations.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like there was some updates to solar specifically. So then with the feasibility study, you said it's typically not required, but it sounds like we need to check with our state energy coordinator ahead of time because it needs to be submitted at the time of the application. It's not something that you would request for our application to be considered complete.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there is a chance that upon receiving an application that we would then request it. Yes, but get in touch with your state. And I was just going to say, please definitely get in touch with your state energy coordinator as soon in the process as possible.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, other folks on the phones.
Two more raised hands here. Padma Castor again.
Hi, so some of my questions were answered. For a energy generation project, so we don't have to show energy use history.
I'm sorry, could you say that again, please?
If it's a new business installing wind or solar on their facility, they don't have existing usage information. Is that all right?
Yeah, it's not a requirement. Correct.
Okay. Okay, the other question was answered. We're in New York and cannabis is legal here. So we are getting a lot of questions from cannabis farm owners to see if they're eligible. Is there any specific guideline for that situation?
Yeah, cannabis remains illegal on the federal level.
Okay. So is hemp eligible?
Yeah, hemp is possible. It does vary per state. So I would say contact your state energy coordinator, and we would need details on the entity, but there is a possibility for hemp to be okay.
Okay.
So it's not a hard no. It's we need to know more.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Padma. I'm going to grab one from the chat really quickly, just because I want to reiterate this. For folks who are considering combining REAP grant with the federal tax credit, we can't really answer that question for you. You should reach out to your tax accountant, your tax attorney, whoever your advisor is on that, or a few of those. There was another one I thought was interesting, which was, can you do a DIY installed solar project that's not connected to the grid, or do you need to hire a contractor, Jonathan?
That's a lot to unpack. Oh, boy. Well, projects are not required to be connected to the grid. So that's number one. Projects that aren't connected to the grid, I will tell you though, unfortunately, they're not going to score very well in general. Yeah, individuals may complete the work. There are sections of the regulations that do allow for that, as long as the applicant is willing, is able to show that they're qualified to do the work. But we wouldn't be able to pay them directly for the work. They wouldn't be able to charge the grant for doing the work. But we would be okay if they were, if they were able to do the work and they could show that they were qualified.
Right. All right, looks like we got one more on the phones.
Yes, Michael Williams, if you would come off mute, please.
Hello.
Hi, Michael.
Hello, how you doing? Yeah, I'm in the rural area of Missouri, and we have a what was once a vacant commercial building in the small town, which is satisfied by your map. And it's a 150-year-old building with it's been vacant for a period of time, so we don't have a documented energy consumption for the building. Hello?
Yep, I'm listening. I thought you weren't done. I'm sorry.
Okay. And I'm a consulting engineer out of California, but I'm, not registered in the state of Missouri. The brick portion, it's a two-wall brick type of situation. The brick portion is failed, and I'd like to replace it with modern construction and modern windows because you have one-pane windows. With that, the insulated walls be considered a portion, satisfy that envelope calc, the envelope for the building to improve the the thermal efficiency of the walls?
Unfortunately, without a documentable historic energy usage, it's not going to be eligible, unfortunately.
So if it's like like the last person that had the building use energy in the building, say 5 years ago.
Yeah, that doesn't sound as though it would. I would be hesitant to say that. 5 years. That's
the
a
building was
long time.
vacant.
Yeah, that's. I would say the documented history that we require is 12 to 60 months. So it's everything before then. So if it's older than that, then it's not going to be something that.
In other words, it's been vacant for a period of time, so nobody used any energy.
Right.
We just want to do a TI and to put it back on the market.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not going to be eligible for energy efficiency improvements.
Okay.
All right, Michael, thank you for that good question. Anyone else on the phones? Say we got one more.
We have one more. Tina Sprague. Tina?
Aloha. My name's
Aloha. Oh, did we lose you?
Tina, you still with us?
Sorry about that, Tina. Try that again.
Can you hear me?
Ah, there we go.
Sorry about that. I'm very new at this side of the business. I work for a general and solar contractor here. Most of the work we do is all commercial. A lot of the projects that we're trying to put together for our clientele is we also provide power purchase agreements. In addition to, this is really our first grant that we've gone after. The couple questions I had are just the one was, if we're providing a power purchase agreement to the client and we have somebody that's going to finance it, does the grant get issued to the property owner, the financier, or the contractor, or how is that structure determined?
REAP grant applicants need to be the owners and operators of the renewable energy system.
Need to be the owners and the operators. So the PPA financier has to file for it then. Is that correct then?
If they're going to own and operate the system, then yes.
Has to, okay. Second question I had is then if you were talking, I heard just a blip of it, but I wasn't sure as far as getting the REAP benefit and then also being able to take the tax credit as the financier. That's basically what would happen. There's the possibility of can you not take both together, or are you capable, or is that out of your?
Yeah, unfortunately, when it comes to tax advice, we are going to have to reach out to tax professionals.
Okay. Okay, so we would have, as the PPA owner, would have to be the one filing for this then, am I correct?
Yeah, again, it needs to be whoever's going to own and operate the system needs to be the grant applicant. And the entity that's registered in sam.gov.
Okay. So that if it's a power purchase agreement or financier, they also have to be registered. Is that correct?
Actually, that's a really good question. I think that they may have to. We may have to get back to you on that one.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your help. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
All righty. Well, thank you so much, Tina, and thanks everybody. It has been a great hour and a half of questions. Thank you so much, Deb. We got to the vast majority in the chat as well. So I know there was one quickly that I'll answer just because Janet had her hand up on technical assistance. So the technical assistance program is being developed at the national level. It'll be announced at some point over the next few months as well. That being said, the definition of technical assistance in this context can apply to anything that helps people get their applications done. So should reach out to your state office. They may have state level programs already being used. There are nonprofits, especially in the solar industry, that help folks apply. And there'll be the opportunity for more to come on that as well. So huge thank you to Jonathan and Deb and everybody else who made this call possible. The work that will be being done on this project and throughout rural America will really change the energy usage and those energy sources over the next decade. So with that, I will pass it back to our lovely moderators and we'll go from there. Thank you so much, everybody.
All right, thanks for joining us today, and this concludes the webinar.